And to Newswatch, and I have to go back to the Eddie McGuire story, and a good man forced to step down because activists claim his club is systemically racist. The claim, with no proof that I can see, a claim pushed by a former player who actually called himself chimp and now attacks McGuire and the club as racist for not defending him. I reckon many news organisations actually knew that last bit, but didn't want to tell you because defending white Eddie McGuire or questioning brown Heritier Lumumba means you will be called racist. And because, well, you know, questioning Lumumba is something that whites really shouldn't do without grovelling. 2 examples from the ABC.
I am a white woman, and so I am asking the questions in this interview based on what comes into my mind on my personal experience. And so that restricts the terrain that you can go onto with your answers.
The journalists bought readily into the club's sotto voce campaign to discredit him because of their need for access, because of their general conformity and frankly, their whiteness.
So people who doubted Lumumba's claims or simply questioned them, that show they were white, which would come as a shock, of course, to Waleed Ali, the very woke and non-white co-host of Channel 10's The Project. Ali has been slammed on social media for 3 years ago asking Lumumba for evidence to back his claims that he faced widespread racism, that lots of Collingwood players were calling him chimp.
There aren't many players who say that they heard that. There aren't many people at the club who say that they heard that. So that's what I'm trying to get a sense of how widespread it was.
I would say that I would be very surprised if with a majority of players weren't aware of the racist jokes or the nickname.
But they're saying they're not. That's the thing. I mean, even...
Well, no, hang on. What they're doing is consistent with the way that they have been in the past.
But even someone like Leon Davis, who says, I experienced racism, H experienced racism, that's terrible, we should be, right? If this was your nickname around the club for 10 years, he would have heard that, surely.
How weak is this? Channel 10 has now removed that vision from its website. Joining me is Gerard Henderson, columnist with the Australian newspaper, head of the Sydney Institute and author of the Media Watchdog blog. Gerard, people question Lumumba because they were white. How does Waleed Ali fit into that victim narrative?
Well, not easily. As I understand Dr. Ali's background is Egyptian. He's Australian of Egyptian parentage, and he has often declared that he is not white, and he is often criticised, for example, certain media stations for not having enough people of colour on the program like him. And these are legitimate criticisms. So now he's sort of presented, and apparently in some areas, as some kind of person who's speaking disrespectfully to people of colour, which is quite a change. Now, I have my disagreements with Waleed Ali. I don't know Eddie McGuire. I'm not a great fan of Eddie McGuire necessarily, but I'm interested in the debate, and it seems to me that if there is a discussion going on between intelligent Australians talking about matters, I'd like to hear. So I would like to see the interview being available, but apparently, as you've reported, the interview's been pulled by Channel 10. So that's what we're getting.
It's really quite extraordinary. Yeah. No, Gerard, it really this refusal to give a counter argument or even question people in these areas without being damned and having to resign and all that kind of stuff. It's really quite frightening. No mainstream journalist has mentioned what former player and TV star Sam Newman pointed out today in this podcast that I repeated here, that Lumumba in 2007 called himself chimp in the footy record. The official football record actually sponsored by the Players Association, who I think might have some questions to answer or might have then spoke up in favour of Eddie McGuire. I don't know. What is going on here?
Well, I don't really know what happened at Victoria Park or later when Collingwood moved to another ground, what happened on the ground or what happened among the spectators. I mean, I've read reports, I don't really know, but I'm interested to find out. But what you've got is the great silencing. You've got a number of journalists now and others in the media who will only believe what they want to believe and will want to silence what they don't want to hear. Now, this has been around for a while, but it's increasing rapidly, and so you've now got the phenomenon of the media pylon. This is Eddie Maguire's the latest example. And once the media pile-ons on, I mean, a person at the end of it can't do anything about it because they can't defend themselves. And even people like Waleed Ali, who a few years ago were asking quite legitimate questions in a courteous and polite manner, but he wanted answers and he's a clever interviewer. Even the record of what he asked in a courteous way has now been wiped from the slate at Channel 10 apparently. So what you've got is this sort of the great silencing going on. It's a democratic form of silencing because no one's been imprisoned or locked away, but careers are being lost, reputations are being damaged, and you can't defend yourself. It becomes impossible. And even those who are asking questions are not allowed to ask them, or if they have asked them, they're not allowed to be on the record as having asked them. So it's quite serious, but it's been going on for quite a while.
Oh yes, Stalin perfected this technique of airbrushing people out of pictures.
Well, we're not quite at Stalin's level yet, Andrew. So, but
I tell you what, give us a century or two, and I wouldn't want to have a bet. Gerard, brawl on the left. Yeah, I know now I'm going into your hyperbole awards in your Media Watchdog blog. Let me retract that comment. Let me retract that comment. Okay. Gerard, a brawl on the left, lighten up the mood.
Yeah.
Race activist, who isn't these days, and ABC presenter Stan Grant. He actually took a dig at two Sydney fellow leftivists. I think you refer to them as lovies in your Media Watchdog blog. Columnist Peter FITZSIMONS and his wife, TV presenter Lisa Wilkinson, who every Australia Day these two hold parties for celebrity leftists at their mansion, a real lefty love-in. Now, Stan Grant was writing a chapter in a story being serialised in the Australian newspaper, Oh Matilda, and poked fun at everyone being more politically correct than thou at the FITZSIMONS-Wilkinson soiree. What did he say that so upset FITZSIMONS?
Well, what you're not allowed to do with Peter FITZSIMONS, or as I call him in Media Watchdog, the red bandanaed one with the red rag on his head, he's allowed to abuse and criticise everyone, but you're not allowed to criticise Peter, and you certainly shouldn't laugh at him. And in the piece that he wrote in the segment in The Australian, Stan Grant's comments about this leftist lovey turnout that turns up every Australia Day, and then I'll call it Independence Day, in Neutral Bay, where you've got this multimillionaire walking around with a red rag on his head, with all his leftist lovey mates there, and what they have in common is that you couldn't find anyone who would disagree with anyone else, except apparently one year Stan Grant got in, saw what he found was a bit ridiculous, and had a serious part, because, I mean, what he made the point is that, you know, no one there liked the Catholic Church, no one there liked the Liberal Party, and, you know, but it was done in a very witty way, but he just wrote it in a witty way, and if Peter FITZSIMONS had said nothing about it, most people wouldn't have heard of it. Peter got terribly upset, and then Stan had to go back, and it's all very funny, except to Peter FITZSIMONS, who can only criticise others and can't stand any criticism of himself. So he criticised believers, particularly Christians, but not only Christians, all kinds of believers. He criticised social conservatives. He criticised the Liberal Party. He criticised the National Party.
But none of them have got red bandanas on their head, Gerard. None of them. See, this is the thing. Bandanas bought in Cuba.
Yeah.
Bandanas bought in Cuba. Gerard Henderson.
Okay.
I got to go because Alan Jones is waiting, and I'd never want to upset him.
No.
Gerard Henderson, thank you so much indeed for your time.
Thank you.